Okay, students, so this week we started our civil rights project. So if you go to the week 5 overview, again, you can see the exact specifications of this project. So this project, you're going to research a major event in the civil rights movement, right? And you're going to tell the story of that event. By event, basically what I mean is basically a civil rights movement that happened in the civil rights era. Okay, so you're going to research one of those events, one of those movements specifically, and you're going to come up with some sources, and you're going to do a presentation, right? Now, I said that presentation will either be a graphic novel or a Pecha Kucha. That could change, but the most important part at this moment in time is just researching one of those movements during the civil rights era. So you guys, last time, theoretically on Monday, you did this assignment called Pick Your Topic. And in this assignment, you were supposed to research one of these movements. So it could have been, women's liberation, or gay civil rights, African American civil rights, American Indian movement, migrant workers, Latino civil rights, etc. Right? And you were supposed to answer those questions. Which one are you most interested in studying? And answer these following questions. Okay. So with that in mind, today I wanted to talk to you guys about finding your first source. So in total, we're going to be finding 4 sources. And those sources will be coming from specific places. Okay? So I wanted to talk to you guys today about where your first source is going to be coming from. So under this assignment that says research accumulation, this is going to be the document that you are going to use to find your sources. This is where you're going to be putting all of your sources and all of the information that you learn about your sources. Okay, so I have some directions here that I'll read out loud, and then we'll talk about it. So before you can put together your presentation, you'll need to accumulate your sources. However, the main point of this research is to make sure your research is academic and credible. So a little note on that. The reason we're doing a research project in this class is because I want you guys to learn how to academically search and find credible sources, because we live in a day and age where we have a lot of information available to us, but I would say a lot of that information isn't correct or credible. And so that's why I think this project is so important for you guys to be able to find out how to find credible sources. Okay, so with that in mind, that is the main point of this, is that we're going to find sources that are credible. Okay. So this document is where you'll be putting your sources, the information you learned, and why you believe that source to be important and credible to your research. So I have an example here. This is for a different research project, but it applies. So for every source you find, you're going to put it in MLA format, so like I have here. The applied question will already be here, and then you're going to summarize that source. So you're going to tell me what happened in that source, your who, what, where, when. Everything that happened in that source, you're going to summarize, you're going to paraphrase it into about 4 or 5 sentences. A note on this, so for your summary, you want a paragraph, and by a paragraph, basically, I mean at least 6 lines down, okay? So 6 lines, that is the standard, at least 6 lines, okay? And then you have your evaluation. In your evaluation, basically, you're going to tell me how you plan on using that source. So tell me, you're answering 2 questions. Why you chose that source. So I chose this source because I believe it's credible, and I give you all the reasons why I believe it's credible. And then I tell you how I plan on using that source within my presentation. Okay. So I give you specific things that source brought up that I will use in my presentation. Okay. So in total, you want to have basically 2 to 3 paragraphs. This paragraph needs to be at least 6 lines down. And if you only have 1 paragraph here, I expect at least 6 lines down. So right here is only 5. I would need to have added another paragraph or another line. Okay, so you're going to be finding 4 sources. This week, we're only going to find 1 source. Okay, this will be a multi-week project where we'll spend a good amount of time looking for these sources. For each of these numbers, so 1, 2, 3, and 4, there are specific questions that you need to have answered. Okay, now you don't need to answer these questions in chronological order, so you don't need to do 1, 2, 3, 4. You could start at 3, then go to 4, then go to 1, and then go to 2, or you can go 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't matter. But these are the questions that you'll be answering in your research project. Now, I put these questions here because an important thing to understand about research is that you want your research to be directed, right? You want to be able to be looking for specific things. So last time in class, you should have already picked your civil rights movement, right? So say you're going to be doing the feminist civil rights movement. What you would do then is you would be finding the answer to one of these 4 questions. So the questions are pretty simple. What was the inception of the civil rights movement? When and where did it begin? Why did it begin? The second question, who were the leaders of the movement you are researching? Why did they get involved? Tell me a bit about each of them. What were some of the notable protests or actions that this movement enacted? What was the public reaction? And then the last question, were there changes to law, perception, or society in general because of your movement? If so, what were those changes, right? And if not, if there wasn't any changes or change of perception or society, why not? And then again, for each of these questions, you'll be writing 2 to 3 paragraphs, okay? So a summary and then an evaluation telling me how you plan on using this within your presentation. So think of this unit in 2 different parts. The first part, you're telling me you're finding all of your research, and then the second part is where you actually put your presentation together. So right now we're basically doing the digging of finding the information we'll be presenting in your presentation. Now, I wanted to talk about your first source and where you're going to find it, okay? Your first source you're going to find using Utah Online Library. So what you'll do is you'll click on this link here. It's going to bring you to this page. You'll click on Utah Student Login, and then you have your username and password. And then from there, you'll be moving forward, okay? Okay, so you come to this screen, and then you're going to be clicking on this Utah Student Login. It's going to take you to this right here, okay? So our first source, we're going to find a source from an academic database. I don't know if any of you have used an academic database before, but they're really helpful, and it's actually something that you're going to be using quite frequently if you attend a college or a university, okay? In fact, most of my research I did in my college courses were from academic databases and not from things like Google, so it's really interesting, right? So anyways, we're going to be using this database right here, World Book Online, or this one, Gale Reference Collection, or this one, EBSCO High School, okay? So if you click on World Book Online, it's going to take you to this page here, and you'll click on Student, and then from here you'll type in your movement, right? So if I'm just doing the normal civil rights movement, I could type in civil rights, and see what comes up, right? So a whole bunch of different things come up. Here's a thing on the civil rights movement. I would then read this source, and if this source answers any of my 5 questions, or your 5 questions that you have here, you'll use, right? You'll be using that information, right? So say I read this and it tells me about when the civil rights movement started, when and where it began, and why it began. I can use this source. So I would then summarize the source, and then I would tell me why I chose this source, and then I would go and tell you what information from this source I will be using in my presentation, okay? And then after that, after I have summarized and evaluated, you need to make sure that you cite it. So if you look up here, again, I cited it in MLA, so you'll need to cite it in MLA as well. The cool thing about academic databases is that it will cite an MLA for you, so you don't have to memorize it. So if you click on how to cite this article down here, they will have a citation here, and you'll need to cite it. Now, a couple of things that I'm a stickler about. This isn't exactly correct. You want to change these quotations. These are straight up and down. You want to make sure they're real quotations. So this, and then you want to spell out the whole month. So February, not Feb. Okay, but you would copy it and you would paste it into your document here. Okay, so that is World Book Online. World Book Online is basically an encyclopedia, so it's a good place to start just to find general information. You could also use Gale Reference Collection High School. Just go ahead and you can click on either. So say, for example, I'm doing civil rights movement, and the question about who are the leaders of the movement, I can research that leader, right? So this is Gale in Context Biography, Gale in Context Global Issues. down, right? So you can either do power search, which kind of crosses a lot of things together, or you can click on one of these specifically. I'll just click on power search for now. And then I'll just type in my person. So I know I read that article, and it says that Martin Luther King Jr. is one of the leaders of the civil rights movement. So now I can research Martin Luther King Jr. more, and specifically, if you see here, there's a lot of information about Martin Luther King Jr., right? So magazines, academic journals, books, right? Thousands and thousands of information, and that's probably because he's so famous and popular. I can filter my responses here to make it more specific. So I could click search within and change things. You can sort it, so I can sort by newest and see what happens, things like that. But anyways, I want to find stuff about Martin Luther King Jr. so I can make it more specific. Biography, see if anything comes up there. And then I would go through these and find something that answers my question about Martin Luther King Jr. So say, for example, I click on news articles, and let's say that this article answers my question, right? So I would read this article. It's actually way too short to read. But again, hypothetically, you would read the article, summarize it. So I would summarize it. I said, okay, this answers my question. This answers question number 2. I'll summarize it. I'll evaluate it. I'll tell my teacher, Mr. Campbell, why I chose it and what I plan on doing with it. And then after that, I would cite it. And again, this is an academic database. They will cite it for you, and you just copy and paste. So that's Gale. Gale is, you're going to get more articles and more responses on Gale than you would on World Book Online. That's because World Book Online is like an encyclopedia. Gale is more of like a traditional academic database. And the last one, you can use EBSCO High School and just click on Explora. Again, they have the similar things here. So here's a history one. I can click on history, and I can search the history there, right? So another question, protests during the civil rights movement, and then I can click search, and I can see what comes up, right? So I can read these, and I can see if any of these answers my question. So I click on PDF full text. Here's this text. This is an address by President Obama. It might not be what I'm looking for, but again, theoretically it could be. If it is, I can then use that, and then I could cite that, and they have a citation button on the side here. I just can't click it right now because of my screen recorder. So anyways, that's the idea. So today you're going to be finding one source from Utah Online Library. It's going to answer one of these questions. So you're only finding one source today. So don't find more than one. Because there are specific places that I need you guys to find your sources from, okay? So you're going to find one source. You're going to use this document here. You're going to cite that source in MLA. You're going to tell me what question it's answering. You're going to summarize the source, and then you're going to tell me why you chose that source and what information you'll be using from that source in your presentation, okay? So if you have questions, feel free to come in. Feel free to email me. But that is what we'll be doing for this week. Again, let me know if you have any questions. Good luck.